A look into the past. A capstone experience for the New London Historical Society. A breeze sweeps down from the mountains, past the rugged hillsides, spotted with cattle and sheep, through the wildflowers and streams lining the roadside. This is an early morning view of quaint New London, New Hampshire, a pleasant land. New London was once a part of the territory between the Pasquataquah and Merrimack rivers, defined in the grant of 1692 as the Alexandria Addition, which after undergoing considerable territorial modifications forms the New London we know today. The Alexandria Addition's first landowner, John T. Mason, bought and sold the acres to the Masonian Proprietors, an association in New Hampshire. The grant placed Jonas Minot and a few others as Lord Proprietors or landowners. Still, it was not until 1774 that there was settlement. Between the years 1775 and 1779, numerous settlers arrived. Finally, Moses Trussell erected the first basic camp on the Belden Morgan farm in Sutton. A few years later, the first child was born within the grant limits in 1776, named John Alexander. By 1779, there were 16 families on the settlement, living in rudimentary cabins enduring the winter hardships and remoteness from supplies. Until Levi Harvey built his mills at the Hominy Pot in 1780, everyone lived in small log cabins with 1 or 2 rooms. By the late 1700s, the Alexandria Addition was also known as Heidelberg to many settlers. The land was surveyed and laid out in 127 lots of 150 acres. The early settlers were formally incorporated into the town in 1779 with a Grant Act of Incorporation. August 25th became the official birthday of New London. Resident Samuel Messer quickly requested the first town meeting be held at his homestead later that day. The second town meeting was held in March 1780 at the schoolhouse. By 1782, New London was gradually expanding. There were now 20 families in town. In June of 1783, the first town census was conducted. There were 46 males over 21, 66 males under 21, 46 females over 18, and 16 females under 18 for a total population of 219 residents. After the close of the Revolutionary War, there was an influx of revolutionary soldiers living in New London, and by October 1785, the town was looking to build a common meeting house. A few years later, in 1788, the first minister, Elder Siemens, an honorary member of the town, was called to New London and installed as pastor the following year. His diary covers much of the late history of New London and follows his daily ministerial life and lectures. At the early turn of the century, New London made the first of several changes to its territorial borders. The town line was expanded to incorporate the westerly part of Kearsarge Gorge, 700 acres of land nesting near Sutton's northern line. The once little village of pioneers became a thriving community of over 300 residents. By this time, a common meeting house schoolhouse, and 2 blacksmith shops had been built. As the town's territorial, residential, and material properties and prospects increased, so did its educational ventures. In 1837, Governor Anthony Colby, a man of considerable influence amongst the town, founded New London Academy, now known as Colby Sawyer College, resting atop New London Hill. His wife, Mrs. Colby, was an ardent supporter of higher educational advantages for women. She became the first principal of New London Academy for Young Women in 1836. However, after a steady increase in the number of pupils, the academy fell under reorganization in 1853, and a few years later, demand warranted the erection of a larger building. The new academy, with its faithful group of professors and well-earned reputation, was perfectly proportioned with brick and granite trimmings. To this day, the devout spirit of Governor Anthony Colby looks down in a fatherly interest upon the college, a silent yet compelling inspiration for higher academic endeavors. By the early 1900s, New London's population had risen to over 768 residents. There were 2 main villages where half the town's population lived. One was Sideville, now known as Elkins, at the foot of Pleasant Lake, and the larger of the 2 villages, New London. At this time, the town stretched for 14,444 acres and contained 2,048 acres of water, while bordering 5 towns: Wilmot, Sutton, Newbury, Springfield, and Sunapee. Still, in the 1900s, much of the town remained timber, swamps, hills, and farmland, until summer home development began on the shores of Pleasant Lake and Lake Sunapee. At that time, there was still no modern plumbing, insulation, or automatic heating. Prices were quite low back then. Wages were about 25 cents in cities and 15 cents in rural areas. Inhabitants still used horse and carriages for transportation. It was not until later in the 1900s that vehicles were introduced. In the winter months, the social event of the season was the Grand Levee at the town hall, where there were sleigh races, and their attached sledding bells fastened on collars, shafts, and body straps were heard all around. In the summer months, the town held picnics, hikes on Mount Kearsarge, bicycle rides, and concerts on the Common. Scenic New London has often been written about by admiring visitors and residents, taken by the charming and quaint scenery, vast woodlands, trails, snowy mountains, and views that will take your breath away. As you rise with steady grace up the gentle curve of New London and reach its peak, the old academy comes into view. At the campus, due north, you shall see Mount Cardigan rising in solitary magnificence. Towards the east, the rugged hills of Wilmot tower above Pleasant Lake. To the north, Mount Ragged stands, and to the right, Mount Kearsarge, with the village of Wilmot resting at its base. If you have seen all this, retrace your steps and return to New London Hill, observing remarkable landscapes and quaint features atop every peak.